Hello, my name's Zachary Lurie and I'm a learning designer at Sustainable Screens Australia. And in this video, we're going to help you complete the materials section of the carbon footprint calculator. I've got my preparation checklist handy, and on page 3, there's quite extensive information about the materials section. This section can be quite challenging because it relies on a lot of estimation and guesswork, conversations with heads of department and production manager early on in pre-production. So I've logged into my dummy production of 10 bedrooms and I've navigated to the materials section. You'll see that in this section we are required to put in all of the materials the production purchases, from batteries, cardboard, food, glass, metal, paint, paper, plastics, which will include foam, textiles and timber. Okay, now let's do an entry for battery. So I'm going to click Add New, type in the name. Now, most productions will should elect to have rechargeable batteries that you can purchase in pre-production, and so it's really good to use those. So what you would do is put in batteries, rechargeable, select your region, click batteries. And for rechargeable batteries, they are going to be lithium. So the selection is lithium ion here. Usually it's going to be AA for your sound department, for production and art. And select the number of batteries and click save. It's really important that if you've chosen to use rechargeable batteries on set, that this entry then won't go into the next disposal section, because you won't be sending those batteries to landfill, but you'll be reusing them, perhaps carry them on to another production. Let's do an example for single-use batteries now. Okay, so type in the name, select the regions, select batteries. This is going to be alkaline single-use batteries. You're probably going to use a lot more. Now remember, this is just an estimate. Ways to update this is to talk to your sound department every week and work out roughly how many batteries they are going through every week. It's really important too that if you are using single-use batteries, that they all can be recycled at local Bunnings and also at Officeworks and other council sites. So set up a battery recycling system in your production offices and with your sound department if you are going to use single use, just so it doesn't go to landfill. Now let's do the next option, which is cardboard. So click Add New, type in the details. Now it's going to be very difficult to work out how much cardboard you're using, considering all the things that the production may be purchasing and getting together in pre-production. So select the region, select cardboard, and the two options is you can actually put in the dimensions of a box and then type in the number of boxes. I think this can be very, very difficult depending, if you've got different size boxes. One of the easier ways to do it is to select weight, and I would suggest putting an estimate in terms of tons. Now, to help you out, the average T-chest box weighs about 1.18 kilograms. And in 1 metric ton, there's approximately 848 cardboard boxes of T-chest size. So I like to use that as a benchmark to say, okay, do I think the production's going to be using at least 800? Is it going to be 1,600? Is it going to be 3,200? So I usually put in the amount in tons to start with. So our production, we're going to put in 1 ton. And it will also ask you if this cardboard is from a recycled source. If it is, select that. If it isn't, again, it's all or nothing. Do 2 separate entries and then click Save. Now let's do the food section. So I click Add New and select Food. Now let's just have a look at how this section works. So it's based on the number of meals, and then the number of meals divided into vegetarian, vegan, fish, and then your proteins, chicken, pork, lamb, beef. Okay, so to work out the number of meals, you could work out the average number of crew and over the number of production days, and then you could also include some meals provided during pre and during post-production. But the challenging part of the food section is how you're going to divide up the total number of meals against all of these type of meals, whether they're vegetarian or meat. So the easiest way to do this is to have a conversation with your catering provider and work out rough ratios that they think of the different proteins will be during the production. I mean, this can be very difficult to estimate given the changing nature of supply chains and availability of fresh produce. But one way to update this is to look at a week's worth of menus. So look at the food that is provided during production for an entire week, Monday to Friday or Tuesday to Saturday, and then just tally how many meals were provided that were chicken, beef, vegetarian, etc. And then use that as your litmus test for the ratio across the whole week. It's really great if your production engages in a meatless Monday or a meat-free Friday, so that you increase the number of vegetarian and also vegan meals available. Now, if we go back to our preparation checklist, on our front page, I've worked out that the average number of crew that we have is 140 per day, and that's over 120 days of production. And they'll each be getting, I'm going to say, 1.5 meals. So one for lunch, and then the half meal for either breakfast or snacks provided depending on the day. So that will give me the total number of meals. Okay, so I've got 140 crew on average times 120 days of production times 1.5 meals a day means that by the end of production phase, we're going to be providing 25,000 meals. Okay. So with this figure, I can then work out the percentage that are going to be vegetarian, vegan, fish, chicken, pork, lamb, and beef. Let's do an example of putting that in, and let's work out how we divide this up. So I've looked, and 5,000 of our meals are going to be vegetarian, and then you click save. You need to put in the details and click save. Then you go back in and then do your other entries. So let's do another example. Let's do beef. Select food. Our beef amount is going to be 7,500 and click save. And you'll see the emissions impact. If you play around with the calculator, you'll see that different types of proteins have different impact because of the amount of water, energy that is used to produce it. So as you'll probably already know, your beef and some fish has a larger footprint than simply eating a plant-based diet. What you would then do is input all of the meals across all of those different protein and vegetable types, and then click save. Now let's do glass. So you click add new, type in the details, select glass. Now, if you select quantity, it's actually only going to give you the options for the number of wine and soda bottles, which might not be that many. You can talk to your art and prop department and work out how many of those. But a better way, again, like cardboard, is to use weight. How are you going to work out the amount of glass is you need to have a chat with your art and props department and do some observations, do some walkthroughs of their production offices and storage facilities, and do your best estimate. And then as the production continues, you'll be able to put in more accurate figure once you get access to ledgers and invoices, and you're able to observe the amount of glass. Thinking about how you're going to recycle that as well, whether it's through specialized recycling or a council service, is also really important. So we're going to put in the amount. Going to start basically in tons because that's a really good measurement, and click save. Now let's complete the metal section. So you click add new, select metal, type in the details. Now, when you look at this section, it's similar to cardboard. It does give you a quantity option, and it's similar to the glass option, but it only allows you to select drink can and tin cans. So it doesn't really allow you to account for any other type of metal in quantity. So the best option again is to click the weight option. And again, I would suggest measuring this in metric tons. So talk to your art department and maybe even special effects, and look at how much metal, also set and props manufacturer, and work out how much metal do you think is being purchased, particularly also in construction, and then enter an amount in tons. So in our example, the amount is 10 tons. Once you look at the ledger and invoices, you'll be able to put in a more accurate figure, particularly towards the end of production in your final carbon footprint, and then whether or not it is from recycled content or not, and click save. I also like to do another entry for metal if, for example, we are using drink cans or aluminium cans for containers. If production officers do purchase cans, single-use drinks, should be a preference for glass and aluminium tin cans. The reason is because they're highly recyclable, and we also have a Containers for Change program in every state and territory in Australia. And the great thing about that is if you set up an account and then you donate all of your cans, or you can use it to buy more groceries at a supermarket, it allows you with that account to tally the total number of cans that you've recycled. And so setting up a Cash for Containers or Containers for Change recycling program on your set is really important, because it helps you tally it, and it's also a visible sign of sustainable practice on set. So for example, I'll just show you how you put that in the quantity. Type in metal drink can, select metal, quantity, drink can, and then the amount, 7,500, and if it's from recycled material or not. If you can tell your runner or production assistant when they are making purchases to preference recycled materials such as aluminium cans, if they have to buy plastic, recycled plastic, water drinking single-use bottles as well, or glass, because they're much easier to recycle. And then click save, and then you'll see that appear there. Now let's go in and add paint. So click add new, select paint, type in the details. Now the main question this asks you is whether or not your paint is water-based, so that's usually your acrylic paints, or whether it's solvent-based gloss or enamel. So have a conversation with the art department, the HOD or the coordinator or the supervisor, and work out how many litres of paint the production is going to go through. So for example, select water-based, and then ask you the type of finish, matte, gloss, or if it's a primer, and then put in the amount in litres, and then click save. You will have to do separate entries, and so what I like to do is put in the description the full details of what it is. So this is water-based, matte finish, and click save. With paint, we do have a paint back scheme around Australia where you can recycle your paint at local council recycling sites, and other programs as well provided by paint suppliers. It's very common in art as well to carry over any leftover paint, and that's taken onto a next production so that we aren't wasting any paint where possible. And it's also important where possible to use water-based and less solvent-based paints, and low VOC or low VOC paints as well, because to minimize toxic paint going to landfill. Now let's complete the paper section. So click add new, type in the details. Now when you select the paper option, it's going to ask you the paper size. Usually it's probably going to be A4, and you'll have some A3 perhaps, and it's going to ask you the number of reams. So 500 sheets of paper are usually in one ream of paper, and usually get 4 to 5 reams per box. Or some boxes it suggests here have 10 reams. So to work that out, what you can do is talk to your production manager, the production coordinator or secretary, and work out how much paper is being purchased in pre-production, and then multiply that out over the number of weeks. Hopefully your production has made digital viewing of material standard, and that's the default. So you actually have to opt in if you want a physical copy. So scripts, call sheets, risk assessments, movement orders, production schedules, crew lists, all of that should be supplied digitally. And also including your purchase order system. It would be great if that was all done digitally as well to minimize the use of paper. So what you need to do is enter the number of reams. You can put an estimate figure based on the amount you think you'll go through per week, multiply that up by the number of weeks of production. Okay, so for us, the example is going to be, we're going to go through 500 reams, and then it will ask you if the paper is from a recycled source or not. Now, it's important that the paper that you purchase is FFC or PEFC certified. That means the paper is made from a sustainably managed forest. Very little paper is available in Australia as of 2023 that is recycled. We are currently in a bit of a crisis trying to find recycled paper, office paper, and a lot of it does need to be imported from overseas. At minimum, ensure all your paper is FFC certified. Look for the logo and don't be confused by some green marketing and materials and green covers and green graphics with trees and things like that. Look for the FFC certified logo and minimize paper use where possible. And then click save. At the end of the production, it's really easy to go and find the metadata of all of the printers used, and it will tell you how many sheets of paper were printed. And from that, you can divide it by 500 to work out the number of reams. It can be staggering at the end of production to work out that you've printed over 100,000 or 200,000 pieces of paper and how that could be minimized. Now let's complete the entries for plastic. So click Add New, select plastic, give it a name. Now in this section, the quantity amount asks you to put in plastic dining items only, so bottle, plate, cups and cutlery. Now hopefully you've eliminated single-use plastic on your set and you're using reusable dining items, and you've also got reusable water bottles, so you won't need to put in any information about that. So instead you need to put in weight. Now you need to consider all the different types of plastic that you'll be using in your production. So one of the common ones are garbage bags, so that your unit department will be using. You can put the amount of that in kilograms, based on the weight of each roll. The other types of plastic can include perspex used in construction. You've also got foam, so styrofoam, that's often used in art and construction. And so what I like to do is put those in as separate entries for plastic. Let's do an example for foam. Select plastic, select weight, and select the weight in tons or kilogram. You can speak to your construction art department and they'll be able to tell you how much they've ordered. So for this example, we've used 1.5 tons, and then you can click save. With some foam suppliers, they do actually take back any offcuts that are undamaged. So it's really important that you let your art department know that any unused foam is collected, bagged, uncontaminated, and sent back to the supplier, because they can actually reuse that to put into other new molds. And other plastic that you may not have been aware of is sometimes your crafties or your afternoon tea is often provided in plastic takeaway containers. If possible, eliminate that and speak to your catering department. But that's another example of where you need to try and capture as much plastic as you can. There are also options for plastic recycling through organizations such as TerraCycle, where you can recycle beauty products, hygiene products. You can recycle COVID masks. You can also recycle pens. Officeworks also has plastic pen recycling as well that you can put in any of their stores. So really take advantage of the recycling services that are available to you, and then perhaps order in a specialized recycling service like TerraCycle to minimize the amount of plastic. Now let's complete the textile section. So press Add New. So when you select textiles, you've got the choice of textile type or fabric, and then you can enter data based on the weight. So this you can put in using kilograms or tons, which I find is the easiest option, especially if you've got the total volume. The other option is by putting in fabric dimensions, particularly if you're using rolls and lengths. That's if you have sewers that are making custom-made costumes, depending on the type of show or the genre. And then the other option is quantity, where you can select the number of t-shirts, trousers, dresses, skirts and jackets. That's another option. So multiple ways to capture this data. Have a conversation early with your costume department, the costume designer, supervisor, or coordinator, and talk through what materials are mainly being used. Another way to do it is during production is go through and observe a rack and look at one character's costumes and work out the percentage of cotton, silk, leather, etc. based on a rack, and then multiply that by the number of racks. You do need to go in and put in entries for all of the different material types. You can do a lot of entries based on the type of clothing, so shirt, dress, jacket, so you'll have a lot of entries. Or, as I suggest, you can do it as total weight. Let's do that as an example now of total weight of cotton. So put in the details, select textiles, select cotton, and select weight. Now, I've had conversations with our costume department, and I've done walkthroughs and observed the number of cotton pieces, and I've also had a look at the cast and worked out roughly how many items of cotton they're each using in the entire production, and it's worked out to be 0.5 of a ton, so we can put in 500 kilograms, and it was all purchased new, which is quite common, particularly for productions for cotton, and then click save, and then you'll see the total emissions impact. You need to do that for each of the textile types or fabric types. When you consider disposal of your costume and wardrobe, it's really important that none of that is sent to landfill. The majority can be stored for another season if it's an ongoing series, or you can then donate to local charities, school and community groups. And it's also really common to have a sale on set where you can actually pass on some of the wardrobe items to cast and crew, particularly if there's no IP attached to that, so there's no intellectual property concerns from your production company. Now let's complete the timber section. So click on Add New and select Timber. Now the options that you have available for timber are quite helpful at draft stage. So you can put in the total spend, so if you can find the budget line item on the amount of spent or allocated for timber. Unusually though, you have to do a conversion here. You have to put the amount in British pounds. So go to xe.com and convert Australian dollars into pounds. Let's put an example in there here. Say that we're spending 2,000 pounds, roughly, just under 5,000 Australian dollars, and asks you whether or not the materials from recycled content. It's important that when purchasing timber that it is also FFC certified and it is from a sustainably managed forest, and that your suppliers do only provide sustainable timber and ply. And then you can click save, just put in the details, just putting spend here as an example. Let's do another example. So the other option for timber is you can put in the dimensions. So this again is quite lengthy, so if you know the different lengths of timber that you've ordered and then the quantity, you can put that in. I tend to avoid this because it's quite a laborious process. Or the other option is you can estimate the weight in kilograms or tons. So let's just do an example of weight. Using 3 metric tons of timber, and then click save. And you'll see the emissions impact is generated here. It's really important that we think about where the timber is going at the end of production, whether it's being stored or if the sets are being built in a modular way so they can be broken down and recycled. So untreated and timber that doesn't have paint can easily be recycled through timber recycling skips, and many companies will actually provide a skip on site for free because they'll collect and take away that timber and then repurpose it and reuse it rather than sending that timber to landfill. The materials section can be quite tricky, so it is a section you spend a lot of time in, and you can keep updating as you get more data in the form of invoices and ledger items, and you talk to more heads of department. So don't worry if at draft stage it is just an estimate, because this section you will update as the production continues, and to ensure that you get a more accurate estimate of the production's carbon footprint. Where possible, we need to think about reusing, recycling, and repurposing all of our materials, and then ensuring none of the toxic materials are going to landfill. And that's how you complete the materials section of the carbon footprint calculator.